Well, good morning, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Free-for-All-Friday edition of the Dan Clemens Show, a Christian political talk show. This is episode 793. I'm your host, Dan Clemens, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. It is May 5th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we are hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful Central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And I apologize for being late. For whatever reason, I have a battery backup here, but for whatever reason, I did not have it plugged in properly. I must have had a brain fart that day. We lost power here, and I lost everything. I had to sign back on. I'm not able to get back on Blog Talk Radio. There's a major storm running through the area, and as happens, for whatever reason, when we have a major rain event between here and New York City, I have issues hooking up to Blog Talk Radio. So I'll be uploading the audio for the show after I'm done with the show, so we're just live on YouTube. Hopefully everything's working okay. I'm looking over, and all the volumes are good. Everything's actually going out. So we'll just endeavor to carry on just on YouTube. And again, I apologize to the folks on Blog Talk Radio that normally listen on Blog Talk Radio. If I seemed a little bit distracted here, I got to start recovering everything. On my open office, it has a recovery mode just like the Microsoft Office writer, Microsoft Word actually, has a recovery mode. So I had to go through and recover everything. I actually started writing I almost had it done, but I did not have it saved. So anything on my documents I didn't have saved, I will lose. But I have everything else on the document except for my little intro to the show. And today's show is entitled Second Amendment Healthcare and Convention of the States. And one of the things I was going to have in the title there, and I'm still going to have it in there, folks, that two of these, there's something, different with all three of these. And two of these are the same, the other one isn't. And I said, guess which one, guess what the differences are. And basically two of them are constitutional and one isn't. The Second Amendment and the Convention of States being constitutional, and healthcare is not. Now, I've been dealing a lot lately with the anti-freedom crowd on Facebook and Twitter about this issue of healthcare. Indivisible Group, which I'm still working on a rebuttal to their PDF, which is taking a while because it's exhausting trying to refute all the error that the anti-freedom groups put out. And there's a reason why they do this. They put this out, and so you have to go research it to see if what they're saying is so, and it wastes a lot of your time. And actually, as far as the Indivisible Group goes, on Twitter, they've actually been putting out these huge 100,000 people numbers, that these many people, in the hundreds, multiple hundreds of thousands in these voting districts in these different states are going to be without health care because of pre-existing conditions. I've asked numerous times this week, especially since I started this campaign maybe about 3 days ago, 2 to 3 days ago, where they're citing this, because I can't find the numbers. I've been Googling, I've been searching and searching and searching, and I cannot find the numbers that they're talking about. I can't find any numbers that they're talking about in the hundreds of thousands of people that are going to get kicked off with the new ACHA that the House has passed. Now, just because they passed Ryan Care does not mean that it's going to get through the Senate. There is, believe it or not, some Democratic pushback on this, and it's not because they want Obamacare. These Democrats disagreed with Obamacare, disagreed with everything that was in it. Not everything, but they disagreed with a lot of the things that were in it. But they're disagreeing on the Ryan Care for the same reasons, and I think they're correct, especially Rand Paul. Now, it's been my research, and I've been really working hard the past 2 or 3 days, researching to see about this pre-existing condition with the health care, and to see if if they just repealed it outright, would they go back to the state laws? Yes, they would. They would go back to the state laws. Therefore, I started researching, and it's taken a while to get through some of these things, but I've actually researched New Jersey and Pennsylvania because I was researching some other things along with it, because the anti-freedom crowd absolutely will not give you the links to their research, where they're getting these numbers from. And so I'm going to call them out on this. I'm going to call Indivisible Group out on this, that they are lying to the American people. They are lying to whoever their supporters are with these vast, great numbers. My Facebook antagonist, Kim Eaton, and her minions on there, and not so much her minions anymore, because and this I didn't know you could do this on Facebook, and I'm still researching this. Maybe someone can help me out there. I thought when you posted something on Facebook that sharing it was automatic. And I guess it isn't, because for whatever reason, and I know why Kim does it, but I don't know why other people do it. I know Kim does it because what I was doing was actually sharing her post on my timeline and putting comments at the top. So the rest of my, because nobody else unless they actually went to my timeline and looked, would see her nonsense. And so I was doing that, and she was getting a lot of pushback from my constitutional warriors who follow me. And so I think, like I said, I haven't really investigated, but obviously I think you can disable the share on that. So what I've been doing is copying the content. It's a little bit more arduous, but it's easy to do. I copy the content of the article, and then when I start typing in Kim's name, it brings up a link. So I just hit on that, so you know who it's originally from, and I say this is originally from, and what's your thoughts on this? And she has been just on a tear and a tirade, calling everybody who voted for Ryan Care a Nazi, putting this long list. I mean, it is a grocery list of pre-existing conditions, including C-sections, which I have yet to find that anywhere that's considered a pre-existing condition. And she was complaining about how her husband was going to need a hip replacement, and they were going to have to sell their house and everything just to afford that, go broke basically. Which she's always, and a lot of people are doing this, folks out there. People that look like they're doing well in life, educated, have college degrees, jobs and everything like that, but yet they come back and cry poverty because they have to pay for a medical procedure. Okay, join the rest of us. And I haven't heard back from her yet, but I told her, I said, this whole thing is government caused. And I give her a link to the article that I was sharing with you folks yesterday about how in the 1940s and 50s that the government created this insurance nightmare, and it was these pre-existing conditions were caused by the government. Now, I said yesterday on the show, the solution for this would be medical savings accounts. That's something you could take with you, just like if you got a 401k through a company, you can take that and roll that over into an IRA, or you can roll it over into the next company's retirement plan if you so choose. I've been rolling mine over into 401 my individual retirement account, my IRA. The amounts that I haven't been using to live on. But they're mine. I take them with me. They're not a pension where the company can keep it and I only get a part of it back. I get 100% of my contributions, and after you're vested, the company's contributions. And so all the IRAs except for one, or all the 401ks except for one, I was vested in. So I get 100% of that back. So I get to take that with me. Health insurance should be the same thing. Why in the world would you not want a medical savings account? It's yours. The employer can't take it away from you. What you don't use in medical bills, you can use towards your retirement. And even then, What a lot of people should be doing is putting away a medical savings account and putting away a 401k or an IRA for their retirement, not relying on government programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And then we wouldn't have all this nonsense going on in the political realm out there. People scared that they're, being frightened into believing that their Social Security is going to be taken away if they shut the government down, because those arguments were coming. They always do. They are always, the anti-freedom crowd always uses fear to try to get people to see their side of the story, or their narrative. So this would take out a lot of the political nonsense that is unconstitutional to begin with. Health care on the federal level is unconstitutional. I don't care what Chief Justice Roberts, excuse me, that one snuck up on me, said about it when he erroneously, unconstitutionally put back in the Obamacare, the severability clause that the Democrats wanted to leave out because they wanted it all or nothing. They wanted it all or nothing. So they left out on purpose. Talked about it in legislation. We talked about this years ago on the show. And yet Judge Roberts put it back in unconstitutionally because he didn't want to face the political backlash from the left. That's a real man of principle there. I'm just stating facts, folks. And actually he's not. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. He's not a man of principle there. So this week we've been talking a lot of constitutional things, and healthcare is not one of them. It is not constitutional, period. And yet we act like if we get the federal government, or at least the anti-freedom crowd out there, acts like if we get the federal government out of the healthcare, out of people's healthcare, that the system is just going to fall apart completely. No one's going to have insurance. Everybody's going to be denied insurance. It's going to be the wild, wild west out there when it comes to health insurance, when it absolutely is not. Because, and I've been checking, this is what I've been checking out, and this is what takes so long in the research, at least the two states I know of for sure, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, even though Obamacare came into existence, they never took the time to go back through and get rid of the laws off the books when it comes to, and we'll just stick with pre-existing conditions. Pennsylvania, the law is still on the books about pre-existing conditions, that if you get a policy, the insurance company can only make you wait up to 12 months. And I know, well, only a person could die within 12 months. Folks, there's a difference between health insurance and health care. They're not stopping you from getting health care. Would it be a lot of money out of pocket sometimes? Yes. But they're not stopping you from getting health care. And this day and age, if you run into a situation like that, and a lot of people do this, they start, when they can't afford something like that, they start a GoFundMe page. And usually, more times than not, they get their bills paid. Especially if the money's going to the actual institution that you owe the money to instead of just to yourself. So this is an erroneous argument. The anti-freedom crowd is absolutely lying to America. The numbers that Indivisible is showing on Twitter, this has been mainly Twitter, some on Facebook that I've seen, they are absolutely lying to the American people because the numbers are so huge. We're talking anywhere from 150 to 350 to 400,000 people in a congressional district that are going to be denied health care because pre-existing conditions. And the pre-existing conditions that they're talking about, I've asked them, I've asked Kimberly, and I've asked other folks in Indivisible to please give me the link where these are considered, where you're saying that these are considered pre-existing conditions. More times than not in the past, and I think it's going to be the same way in the future, they're going to tell me all I got to do is Google it. Well, trust me, folks, I've been Googling it and can't find it. They must be using a different Google than I am, or Yahoo. I use Google, Yahoo, and Bing. If I can't find it on one, I try the other. If I can't find it, I just go through my paces and try to do my research the best I can. And that's exactly the pushback I get from these folks. And my pushback to them, and it's starting to become my answer, unless you provide references to the garbage that you're spilling out in your memes and in your Twitter postings and in your Facebook postings, and quite frankly on, in your so-called news postings about these things on places like Mother Jones, Slate, Salon, Huffington Post, unless you provide those links for that, I'm going to call you on it. I'm going to call you on it, because it shouldn't be up to me. If on this show, when I say something, I'll give you the references. I'll show you exactly my research, where I'm trying to find this and what I found. And I share it with folks on Facebook. I share it with folks on Twitter. So I share you my references. I share you my research to back up what I'm saying. And folks, this is what's frustrating. And I think, honestly, and maybe I'm slow coming to the meal or whatever, coming to the picnic, but I believe this is on purpose, that they're actually doing this on purpose. This way it bogs you down, it bogs me down in trying to research this stuff and takes our eyes off the prize. So just like when I talked months ago about Kafka trapping, where they throw up these accusations about you, and your first instinct is to apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, for that. And in that apology, you are admitting that whatever their accusations are, sexist, misogynist, racist, homophobic, Islamophobic, whatever, you're actually admitting by apologizing. And I caution people about doing that. I said, don't do that. Your best defense is to put the onus back on them, the burden of proof back on them, and say, if you're calling me a racist, you need to supply the proof for that. And I've been finding out with some of these articles out there on the anti-freedom media out there, the lamestream media, and I include Mother Jones and Slate and Huffington Post and Salon, along with that, the anti-freedom lamestream media type people out there. When you read through this one article, it was nothing but anecdotes. People were saying that this was happening to them without giving any proof, and it was just they were actually in the article, and I don't have it up here to share with you because I'm still doing research on it. In the article that I have what I do is when I'm researching, if I find an article, read through it, and it's something pertinent to my research, I'll copy the URL and email it to myself. So I have an email of it, and I'm doing some research here. I'm going to try to do a exemplar tentis vlog about pre-existing conditions and the less view of them. And so I am diligently working on this, and it is almost, to me, it's almost a Herculean effort to find this stuff. But this one article I'm going to get back to, they were even asking, we want your anecdotal stories of how you were denied pre-existing conditions. Well, anybody can tell a story. Anybody can tell a story. And let me tell you a story. I have 2 medical conditions, actually 3 now, that I suffer with. And the one, not so much anymore, sleep apnea. This time of year, I can't use my CPAP machine because of all my allergies, and it suffocates me. However, and they're going to test me on my oxygen here soon. However, I seem to get a fairly good amount of sleep, even without the CPAP machine, because I make sure I spray my sinuses with a saline solution. And if it gets too bad where I feel like I can't sleep, or Lori says I'm snoring, I'll put a Breathe Right strip on. And I put the Breathe Right strip on, and I'm breathing fine. And so it's up and down with the sleep apnea, but it's still a condition, a medical condition that is on my medical record that could be considered a pre-existing condition. Diabetic. I've been diabetic since 95. Never, on the basis of my diabetes, have I ever been denied coverage. Period. Doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. And now I have fibromyalgia, which is considered a pre-existing condition now if I go get another insurance policy. Okay, but in Pennsylvania, they can't deny me health insurance for just regular things. They can just say we're not going to pay for treatment of your fibromyalgia for 12 months in Pennsylvania, and I think it's 6 months in New Jersey. If I remember, I got so many facts and figures floating through my head. So the anti-freedom crowd's insane pressure on the repeal of Obamacare is just crazy in the extreme, folks. Because, and this you have to understand, folks, they will not give you the facts or the references to confirm what they're saying. They're just putting this stuff up because it supports the narrative. Remember we talked a few weeks ago about critical thought theory and the Socratic method? And in modern days, we used to talk about teaching our children to critically think about things. And that would be more attuned to the Socratic method. But nowadays, in what they call critical theory or critical thought theory, you have a conclusion that fits a narrative that you agree with, and then you go back and you either, and this is what I'm finding out here, folks, a lot of times they don't even look for the facts. They don't even want to know about the facts because they know if they go research it, or if they have researched it, they can't find the facts to support their position, or they have to cherry pick the facts so bad and misrepresent those facts so bad to support their narrative that they've just come up with this conclusion that we're just going to put this stuff up out there, and we're not going to put references up. We're not going to cite facts. Like yesterday, I said, if you look into like the CBO's numbers, now the CBO, when it comes to statistical analysis, as far as finding out what the stats are, they're fantastic. But applying those stats is where they fall down. And when they applied these pre-existing condition stats, they applied them clear out, oh, this number is going to be this amount in 2026. They don't know that. There's no way that they can mathematically know that, folks, because there could be, like I said yesterday on the show, there could be some free market solutions come along that take care of this pre-existing condition completely, and then what does that do with their 2026 number? See, the anti-freedom crowd never goes that way. They never, ever go that way because it doesn't fit their narrative. And so I'm convinced that the anti-freedom crowd out there that reports on these type of things and has so-called news sites, or they're tweeting these things or post them on Facebook, have come to the conclusion that it's not their job to supply the facts. You have to go out and search these facts that we're telling you this is what they are, and they're not backing them up at all. At all. And so, quite frankly, if anymore, I'm telling you, anymore, I see these articles and I run these references and they don't lead anywhere, like they lead to another blog that's just an opinion piece that doesn't back it up with any references or facts that can be verified, I'm just going to call them on it, that they're just blowing smoke into people's faces. They're absolutely lying to people, and we shouldn't let them get away with this at all. We should not let them get away with this. And it irks me to no end that they're lying to people about health care out there. And like I said, the very simplest free market solution that would work for everybody. I don't care if you're on welfare. I don't care if you're a seasoned citizen that's drawing retirement and on Medicaid or Medicare, whichever one, Medicare I guess it is, for old age. If the government would take all the money that they're wasting on healthcare right now, they could literally, and I don't want them to do this, but they could do this, they could literally fund MSAs for every man, woman, and child in the country and save the country untold hundreds of billions of dollars, not just a year, forever. And actually just mandate that MSAs are what people are going to have. You have these medical savings accounts with a catastrophic rider put on them. Your employer puts in so much. You have to put in so much if you're working. If you're not working and you're on welfare, these should be set up and funded through the welfare, and you decide that what you're going to spend that money on as far as health care. That way, when you go to a doctor, instead of going to a emergency room, if you can go to an emergency room if you want for the sniffles, but you're going to get a big hit on your MSA. It'd be cheaper to go to the doctor and pay them cash. It would be, folks, this is such a simple solution that a lot of people look at and say it can't be that easy, when it absolutely is. An MSA is where to go. You know, and this thing with pre-existing conditions is government contrived. And people have to understand that, folks. They have to understand that. You know, and all these people, I want these people, honestly, that think this way about pre-existing conditions and think that they should be able to just get the insurance when the condition comes up and not have the insurance ahead of time. I want them to do the same thing with their auto insurance. I want them to do the same thing with their health insurance. Well, let's go to the auto insurance. I know this for a fact. If I restore, and I would love to get a hold of some 1973 vintage vehicles, Cutlass Supreme because I owned one, a 1973 Gran Torino because I owned one. I drove a 73 Mustang Mach 3. I'd love to own one of those, but it had to be a 73. They are so old that I could not get regular coverage on them as far as collision coverage and stuff like that because they're not on the Kelley Blue Books anymore. So what I'd have to do, I would have to insure them for an amount that would actually replace them, what I have invested. Now, that's going to cost me more money. No doubt in my mind, because I'm trying to insure something that's out of the normal. And if you have a pre-existing condition and you felt that you shouldn't be on insurance and you want to come get insurance, that's the same way. It's going to cost you more, and it should. And two, the amount that they're going to cover is going to be higher, so that's why it's going to cost you more. You see how MSAs would take care of that? You wouldn't have to worry about ever coming out from underneath coverage because you have it. You have it through the MSA. You never worry about coming out from underneath the coverage. I have on my house here. This house was built around 1901, early 1900s. But I have replacement cost insurance on it if it burns or if the storm takes it out or whatever. Because me just getting the loan paid off isn't going to put me in another house. Because this was, right now we owe less than $30,000 on it. It's probably closer to 20 now. But we owe less on it, but can you buy a home for $30,000? So we got replacement costs. Does that cost me more? Yeah, it costs me more. But I want it, and basically what it is, it's an insurance that covers the replacement, square footage replacement of this house by today's costs. And yes, it does cost me more, but I made that decision. And the same way with the amount of insurance that talk about these Cadillac plans and stuff like that. Some people have these, and that's what they want because they're paying more for the better coverage. Again, MSAs would take care of this for the average person and even for those on welfare. It's something it'd be cheaper to actually put somebody on an MSA with a catastrophic medical rider on it than what they're doing now. It's absolutely cheaper. Even with my pre-existing conditions, I don't go to the doctor that much more than I used to. I'm just that type of guy. I know my doctor gets after me. We should have come in 3 months ago. I'm feeling fine. I'm not feeling bad now. Let's run the blood work. Blood work looks good. Everything looks good. Okay, doc, why did I need to see you 3 months ago? I know how I feel and stuff. But anyway, folks, this show's being brought to you by Bluehost. If you like the show, Bluehost is an affiliate sponsor of the show, affiliate marketer, and they sponsor the show through this affiliation. The DanClementShow.com is hosted on Bluehost. So if you like what you see over there and you like what you hear on the show here, by all means, please support the show by going to Bluehost through the link at the DanClementShow.com at the top of the page. And right now they're running a $3.95 a month special. It's WordPress enabled. WordPress is so easy to set up a site with, and you get more than your money's worth when you set up with Bluehost. So Please help me support the show by going and supporting one of my affiliate sponsors. Today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Psalms, chapter 119, verses 144 through 148. The righteousness of your testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live. I cry out with my whole heart. Hear me, O Lord, I will keep your statutes. I cry out to you, save me, and I will keep your testimonies. I rise before the dawning of the morning, I cry for help. I hope in your word. My eyes are awake through the night watches that I may meditate upon your word. Now, David was always described as a man after God's own heart, and this just another portion of the book of Psalms where he's actually pouring his heart out to God. Quote meal today comes from St. Augustine of Hippo. Trust the past to God's mercy, the present to God's love, and the future to God's providence. Trust the past to God's mercy, the present to God's love, and the future to God's providence. That's by St. Augustine of Hippo. Today's short Bible lesson, it's a good one if you want to go over and read it. It's Debating Infant Baptism, Answering Their 4 Best Arguments by Wes McAdams of RadicallyChristian.com, and he penned this back in July 12th of last year, 2016. It's an excellent article about infant baptism. You don't want to miss that one. You want to actually go over and read that. I have some good news as far as the Convention of the States is concerned. That's why I'm wearing my hat again today. Texas has become the 11th state to pass the Convention of the States law that they're going to be part of the Convention of the States. There's a lot of other states that are on the cusp. I'm almost feeling a momentum here because of the way the Republicans are acting in Congress today and the way that Democrats have acted in the past. I'm feeling this. I got a gut feeling that this is going to catch on and take off on its own, and we're going to reach that magical number. We're going to reach that magical number, and of 2/3 of the states to call the Convention of the States. So Texas is the 11th state, and like I said, there's a bunch of other ones. Pennsylvania's working on it right now. I'm assured by my state representative that she told me that they're actually passing legislation now in the House. I don't know if Governor Wolf's going to sign it. I have my doubts that Governor Wolf would actually sign something as monumental as Convention of the States, but we'll see. Especially the state which is the birthplace of the Constitution. You know, I have no hopes for Governor Wolf to do anything constitutional. Okay. This is for the anti-freedom crowd that gets after me all the time when I leave comments on postings and Twitter and Facebook about Hillary Clinton. Who cares? She's not president now. Who cares about Hillary Clinton? You know, as far as we're concerned, it's a done deal. Hold the horses here, folks. And I told them, I said, the investigations are still ongoing. So nothing is a done deal yet. They're still investigating the Clinton Foundation. They're still investigating the emails. As far as I know, they're still investigating the misplaced money while she was in the State Department. And if they're not, they still should be investigating Benghazi. Of course, I don't know what's going on with that investigation there. I don't know why they haven't passed down any type of indictments with Hillary or President Obama being asleep at the wheel while 4 Americans were killed over in Benghazi. Just, to me, that still sticks in my craw to this day. But I have this article from conservativetribune.com by Martin Lyle. New Huma emails break contain unsecured Hillary messages referring to cybersecurity. Now, these are the emails that she was passing on to Anthony Weiner, that they found a lot of these emails that were missing on the Clinton servers. They found them on her laptop. So there's still an ongoing investigation about this email thing. And as far as I can find out, they're not commenting on it, but other than it's an ongoing investigation into the Clinton Foundation. And Haiti, if you want to do some research on this, Haiti's really pushing this. They were promised money, and it never materialized from the Clinton Foundation. So, and to me, everything I've seen and read about the Clinton Foundation, it was just a money-making scheme. Just a money-making scheme for the Clintons. I mean, it's no, I don't think it's any more complicated than that. All right, I just looking over to see what my time is. I want to give you guys a solid hour. I'm at the 35-minute mark on YouTube. And again, I do apologize to my peeps over there that normally listen to Blog Talk Radio. I will be uploading this right after the show. I am recording this on Audacity, so that'll be uploaded fairly shortly after the show. The one thing I wanted to get into today was... actually, there's two things I want to get into. We're talking about an article on Huffington Post by Justin Curmi, C-U-R-M-I, a revision of the Bill of Rights, Part 3. Now, folks, it's a one-page article here, so I want to read the whole thing to you, and we're going to get into this. This is put underneath Huffington Post's philosophy section. And I don't know how these guys and gals get up in the morning at some of these places, especially the Huffington Post, especially this Justin guy, Justin Curmi or Curmi, C-U-R-M-I, and tie their shoes in the morning. Their reasoning in this article here is just unbelievable. Wait until you hear it here, folks, real quick. The Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You have to go back, first and foremost, to understand the Second Amendment. You have to go back and read the history around the Second Amendment and around the state militia. There were actually laws on the books. If you were between the age of 16 and 60, you were required by law to keep a firearm in good working order, because you could be called up to service in the militia. But they were required by law to keep and bear arms. And the Founding Fathers saw this as a basic human right of defense against tyranny. Now, someone please look south down of Venice Way and tell me that Maduro would be getting away with anything that he's doing right now to the Venezuelan people if the people had their basic human right of self-defense protected under Venezuelan law. Maduro wouldn't dare do what he's doing down there if the Venezuelan people had the right to keep and bear arms. Not had the right, but they do have the right, but it's protected that the government cannot infringe on that. Shall not be infringed. And you can see all the nonsense that's going on down in Venezuela. And I asked yesterday, and I'm going to ask today, because I have another article here about why people like communism. And it's a good article from fee.org. Well, real quick here. He says here, the Second Amendment is highly contested. It's only contested by those in the anti-freedom crowd because it doesn't fit their narrative. Again, they lie to you about this. It's only contested by them. Right thinking. I mean, not right-left thinking. I'm talking about correct thinking Americans who understand the Constitution, understand our freedoms that were given to us and granted to us by God, that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We need to deal with life when we're talking about this one, because Justin's going to talk about this. I think he's very erroneous. I think he's so far off the mark that someone needs to help him get back on the mark, and that's what I'm going to try to do today. So he says here, the Second Amendment is highly contested. There is no doubt that people do have the right to carry and have a stockpile of guns, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And a state has the right to organize a well-regulated militia, but the main issue is on the right of self-defense with a firearm. So this is where he's going. You already see this is where he's going. The main problem with the notion of self-defense is it imposes on justice. Now listen to his reasoning here for a second, folks. For everyone has the right for a fair trial. Therefore, using a firearm to defend oneself is not legal, because if the attacker is killed, he or she is devoid of his or her rights. In addition, one's mental capacity is a major factor in deciding whether a man or a woman has the right to have a firearm. There are two reasons for ensuring mental capacity. First, one of the 5 aims is to ensure domestic tranquility And there can be no tranquility if one does not have the capacity. Second, if one's brain is distorting his or her reality, they do not have the proper reasoning and deduction skills to use a firearm. Now, he's talking about the preamble to the Constitution when he's talking about domestic tranquility. But again, his reasoning here is faulty. His reasoning here is faulty. There are two reasons for ensuring mental capacity. First, one of the 5 aims is to ensure domestic tranquility. Okay? And let me just get down here to my, I keep it here on my desk here somewhere, close to my heart. Okay. Must have been a while since I've had it. I have a little bit of mail that I'm trying to keep up and answer on my desk here. Oh, man. I'm always misplacing something. Let me do something here real quick, and we'll take but a second, just to bring up so I don't get the wording preamble to the Constitution. This is what he's talking about. All right. Let me get over here. Open this up here real quick. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, comma, get rid of the Articles of Confederation, actually set up a government that works, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. That is the preamble. That is the reason why they're putting forth this Constitution. There is nothing in that preamble that is an enumerated power, like provide for the general welfare. Anti-freedom folks out there always point to this. Well, that's why we have welfare, because it's in the Constitution. They misunderstand and misinterpret the preamble of the Constitution, just like Justin is doing here, because he leaves out to establish justice. Okay, in that little phrase there. Let's read on down through the article. So I'm going to try to be fair with him. Therefore, if we ponder, meditate on the recent events in the news about guns, it would be obvious that the current state is incorrect. A gun for civilians is a weapon for a revolution and not for ordinary use. Again, he shows his ignorance in the history of the Second Amendment and what the founding fathers and the founding generation thought about self-defense, and why they quantified this as a God-given right of self-defense for Americans, or all human beings, but it's a protected right in the United States. So he's saying a gun for civilians is a weapon for a revolution and not ordinary use. The belief that a gun is a useful tool to protect one is counterintuitive, because guns get in the hands of people who use them for horrible reasons. Duh. In addition, there are reasons why cops are trained to use a firearm in stressful situations. It is not to keep their mind at ease or anything of the sort, but to be able to fire accurately at a target in the correct location. It is immensely difficult to fire when you're under pressure. Moreover, one may argue this is an analogous argument, and yes, it is, because the United States government is lobbied not to study and find research that observes the effects of guns. This cripples the chance of evaluating a proper policy to deal with gun violence. But there was one study by ABC which observed using guns in a classroom. All the participants poorly performed at a mock situation. Once again, if there is an argument in the reasoning of this amendment and others, one must filter it through the 5 aims of the USA and the Bill of Rights. This is to ensure that any argument can be answered, avoiding a political divide. That is not... Can this guy get up and tie his shoes in the morning? That's what I'm asking here right now. Yes, he does make some points in there about these mock situations, and that's why police train. That's why private citizens should be familiar with their firearms and actually train in these type of situations. There are a lot of shooting schools out there that put you through these situations. some of these technical schools, I think, go a little bit too far and try to treat you like a soldier instead of, one, find concealment, get out of harm's way first, and then, if need be, to protect yourself and those around you, then pull your weapon, and only then should you take the time to fire, unless you don't have time to do it and you want to try to do a quick draw, which I think that's stupid to begin with, but that's your choice. Justin would have people believe that this is counterintuitive because the guns in the hands of people use them for horrible reasons. Folks, it may be cliche, but all you got to do is look down at Venezuela. If the citizens do not have firearms, the government can do whatever it wants. Period. We're not talking about good and bad people. I'm not saying everybody in the government that is fighting against the population is bad. But the tyrannical ends of President Maduro and his socialist government, and you can see the results of that, are bad. And one of the reasons the Founding Fathers actually took the time to talk about this and put this in the Bill of Rights, which was originally in the Virginia Bill of Rights with George Mason and Madison, was to protect, so the people have protection against the tyrannical government. And folks, this Justin guy, everything he's talking about flies in the face of history. If you go to Bunker Hill, Massachusetts, why was that battle fought? Because the British government was trying to get the arsenal that was at Bunker Hill, the gunpowder and the rifles, so the colonists could not fight against them. They were trying to take the means of protection out of the hands of the colonists because they understood, even the Brits understood, that if the colonists had no means to protect themselves, they could do whatever they wanted to them. And if you look at the history of the British Empire and their colonization and the turmoil in the late 1800s, early 1900s over that, it was easier for them to control a population that wasn't armed. Period. French Algiers, same thing. Any country out there that had colonies. It was easier for them to control the masses when they weren't armed. And this Justin guy, a revision on the Bill of Rights, Part 3. And honestly, I need to go back and read the first two. I didn't take time to go read the first two because I was laughing so hard about this one. Secondly, let me put this notion forth here. If you're being aggressed against to the point that you feel that your life is in danger, or at least in danger of physical harm, maybe not that your life's going to be taken from you, although it's a quick second from one to the other, from bodily harm to lethal harm, and you feel the need to protect yourself, that aggressor, Justin doesn't even talk about this. If you kill somebody using a gun, you've taken away their right for a free trial. If they aggress against you, they have just forfeited their right to a free trial. Nobody. And this is where his argument falls down, and he doesn't address it in this. Nobody has the right to aggress against you with lethal force. Nobody has the right to aggress against you to do bodily harm. And you cannot tell me, and Justin can't say it either, you cannot tell me if someone that's going to attack you, if they're just trying to cause bodily harm or if they're trying to kill you. And if you take that stance, well, he may just be trying to do bodily harm to me and not kill me, so I'm not going to defend myself. If you take that stance, you're opening yourself up to a world of hurt. You open up your friends and your family to a world of hurt because it only takes a lucky punch or a punch landed in just the right spot on the body around the neck and shoulders to kill you. It only takes one bullet to shoot you in the right place, and you can bleed out in seconds. And if you're like this Justin, I hope this Justin doesn't have a gun. I really don't. Because I don't, honestly, when he talks about mental capacity down there in verse 3, or paragraph 3 down there, I don't think he has the mental capacity to defend himself, to be quite honest with you. just from his statements there. And statistics have proven and shown over the years, and you have to keep bringing these back up to these anti-freedom people, that states like Texas, we'll use Texas, who has open carry laws, concealed carry laws. There are states out there with constitutional carry, you don't need a permit. And there was a police chief, I keep going back to this, I shared this on the show months and months ago, maybe years ago, that he was interviewing, this police chief in Detroit was interviewing criminals. And you know what the criminals' number one fear was? Their number one fear was that somebody that they were aggressing against might have a gun. A civilian, a citizen might have a gun. That was their number one fear. They didn't fear the cops. They didn't fear other criminals because they knew they had guns. But the unknown is what scared them. And again, for this Justin to pen this article and try to sound intellectual, he failed miserably. He is conflating too many things in here, doesn't understand what the preamble is, doesn't understand what the Bill of Rights is. Most of these anti-freedom people, folks, and I'll give you this one for free. Most of these anti-freedom people think that the Bill of Rights are there so government, the federal government can govern over these things, even though it says shall not be infringed at the end of the Second Amendment. And the only question I have for these anti-freedom folks out there that are against the Second Amendment is this one thing, or the bill. Let me expand it to the Bill of Rights, okay? Because it goes close to the 10th Amendment, where the states' rights. Please show me in Article 1 or Article 2 of the United States Constitution where the federal government has an enumerated power to govern these things. And go define what enumerated power is. That's why healthcare is not. That's why healthcare is not constitutional. It's not. Real quick here, and I want to get to this before we end on the show here. I got about 7 minutes or so. I can go over a little bit here on YouTube because I got clear to 2 o'clock if I had to. This is an article by Jeffrey A. Tucker over at Foundation for Economic Education.org, FEE.org, and Jeffrey's been a good author. I think he's well researched, and when he puts pen to paper or fingers to keypad on a word processor, I think he's accurate and he's correct. Why do people become communists, and why do they stick with it? And this, I think, is the fundamental question that needs to be asked today, because the anti-freedom crowd in America, they want to become communists. They want to become communists. They want the power that Maduro has in Venezuela, but in their elitist, fractured thinking, that they are more intelligent than anybody else that's come down the pike, they would do a better job than Maduro in putting socialism into place in Venezuela. And folks, it's no more complicated than that. They actually think that. Socialists and communists think that history is not the guide, even though it failed in history, and they believe it failed because people were not either intellectually honest or they weren't of the sufficient intellect. They weren't of sufficient intellect to do it justice, to do it correctly, to make it work. Even Stephen Hawking has been making some predictions, and honestly, there are certain aspects of life that I think Stephen Hawking is educated beyond his intelligence to even answer. And I don't care if he's in a wheelchair or not. He speaks, therefore he can be debated. All right. This is by Jeffrey A. Tucker. This is posted May 3rd of this year. And real quick, before I forget, and I didn't mean to forget this, folks. I really didn't. For those of you out there celebrating Cinco de Mayo, happy Cinco de Mayo Day. This is one of these holidays that I do not celebrate because it's not an American holiday. And as far as I know, the only reason why we celebrate it here in America is because of the Mexican enclaves that are in America. Now, Cinco de Mayo has always been celebrated on the 5th of May because this is the date observed to commemorate the Mexican army's unlikely victory over French forces in the Battle of Puebla on May 5th, 1862, under the leadership of General Ignacio Zaragoza. Okay, and it's celebrated in the United States in the Mexican American culture. And the only reason why I mention all this today, is because there's a lot of folks on Occupy Democracy, things like that on Facebook. They're actually putting out videos saying, because of people supported Donald Trump and immigration and the wall and stuff like that, you better not be celebrating Cinco de Mayo. You better not be going to Taco Bell or Chili's or any Mexican restaurants. You do not have the right to do that. And it's like, of all the things to be talking about, even my cousin on Facebook was talking about celebrating Cinco de Mayo, and that Trump supporters shouldn't be allowed to celebrate that. I'm like, well, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I don't plan on celebrating Cinco de Mayo either, because it's not an American holiday. And folks, if you're an American and you want to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, have at it. You have the freedom to do so. But I also have the freedom not to. I really do. I just wanted to get that out before I got to the end of the show. Now, all right. For as long as this is Jeffrey Tucker talking. For as long as I can remember, I've puzzled about why people become communists. I have no doubt about why someone would stop being one. After all, we have a century of evidence of the murder, famine, and general destruction caused by the idea. Ignoring all this takes a special kind of willful blindness to reality. He puts it mildly here, a willful blindness to the reality. And this is, folks, this describes the anti-freedom folks and groups in this country. A willful blindness to reality. Slogans and dreams are hardly a substitute for a suitable substitute for a workable program. Even the theory of communism itself is a complete mess. There's really no such thing as common ownership of goods. They're obviously scarce in a real world. There must be some solution to the problem of scarcity beyond just wishing reality away. Perhaps ownership and trade. Slogans and dreams are hardly a suitable substitute for a workable program. But how communism would work in practice is not something they want to talk about. They just imagine that some magical Hegelian shift would take place in the course of history that would work it all out. So they're in a willful blindness to reality. So there's no rational case for communism as such, but why do people go for this stuff? The Red Century. The New York Times has been exploring the issue in a series of remarkable reflections they have labeled Red Century. I can't get enough, even the ones that are written by people who are, how shall I say, suspiciously sympathetic to communism as a cause. The most recent installment, and there's a link in the article, and this is what I keep talking about to people about references and stuff. The recent installment is written by Vivian Gornick. She reflects on how her childhood world was dominated by communists. And he goes on and talks about that in there. I don't want to read the whole thing because I'm coming down to the end of the show. It's very lengthy. But I just want to go down to the end here where it talks about where the dream dies. And let me just hit the highlights. He talks about the early Reds of the 1900s. And if you ever watched the movie Reds, I want those 3 hours back in my life. I watched this when I was very young because I thought it'd be a good movie to watch. And with Warren Beatty, and I think Jack Nicholson was in it. What these people were in for. I mean, it was a decent movie. It was too long. And these people, these red Americans went over to Moscow, over to Russia, and they really found out what communism was all about and really didn't like it. Even though they were sharing their ideals over here. The dream dies. It's towards the end of the article here. Watching their one-by-one demoralization is painful. Goldman sees the betrayal immediately. Reed becomes, and this, he's talking about the movie Reds. He's talking about the movie Reds, so I forgot to say that. Sees his betrayal immediately. Reed becomes an apologist for genocide. Bryant forgets pretending to be political and believing in free love. Marries Reed and tends to his medical needs before his death. O'Neill just becomes a full-time cynic and drunk. It took Max Eastman longer to lose faith, but he eventually became an anti-socialist and wrote for FEE. And he's not, what he's talking about here in The Dream Dies is some of the portrayals in this actually go back to the movie Reds, and some of them are not. And he goes up, if you read the article, these names actually make more sense. The initial dramatization of the early American communists came in the 1920s. They came to realize that all the warnings against this wicked ideology had been written about for many centuries prior, even back to the ancient world, were true. Eastman, for example, realizes that he was seeking to liberate people by taking from them three things people love most in life: their families, their religion, and their property. Instead of creating a new heaven on earth, they had become apologists for a killing machine. Stunned and embarrassed, he moved on with life. But the history didn't end there. There are still more recruits being added to the ranks, generations of them. The same thing happened in 1989. Some people lost their faith. Others decided that socialism needs yet another chance to strut its stuff. It's still going on today. As for the Communist Party in America, most left progressives of the Antifa school regard the party as an embarrassing sellout, wholly owned by a capitalist elite. And when we see their spokesman appear on television every 4 years, they sound not unlike pundits we see on TV every night. It would be nice if any article written about communism were purely retrospective. That sadly is not the case. There seems to be new brands of Marxism thought codified every few years, and still more versions of the Hegelian roots that take on ever more complex ideological iterations. The alt-right is an example. Why do people become communists? Because human beings are capable of believing in all sorts of illusions. This is the key to this whole article, and are capable of working long and hard to turn them into nightmares. Once we invested the time and energy into something, however destructive, it can take a very long time to wake up. It's hard to think of a grander example of this sunk cost fallacy. And that's another link to there. And there's a lot of links in here. You can go read some of these things. I've read these before about what he was talking about. And I can't pronounce some of these Russian names and stuff like that. But one of the best reads you can do, and if you don't want to read it, go watch the movies, a 3-part movie, Ayn Rand. She grew up in communist Russia. And she got out of there, and her writings were prophetic, to say the least, and not in some supernatural way, but if you actually look at communism and socialism in the light of history and what it actually accomplished, if you're not willfully blinded to reality, you'll see what it's accomplished. And then all you got to do is extrapolate from that and go to the opposite side. Well, if this didn't work, what does work? If absolute despotism didn't work, well, will freedom and liberty work? And start working things out that way. And that's exactly what Ayn Rand did. I know a lot of people don't like her. I think she was brilliant for her day. I didn't agree with every aspect of her life, and I don't agree with every aspect of everybody's life. But that's not my point here. My point is the elite, and we have kids today that were following Bernie Sanders, who is a communist. Now, he says he's a socialist, but it's all part of the same tree. They're all part of the same poisonous, dead tree. And we had millions of young adults following Bernie Sanders, and even some older ones thought what he was saying was good. And they've invested so much time in it that when things are pointed out that they're actually wrong, they don't want to admit it, and they'll fight you tooth and nail the whole way. They'll fight you tooth and nail to support their ideology, their narrative, because they've put so much time into it that their narrative just cannot be wrong. And I encourage you, if you have the stomach for it, go watch the movie Reds. And it's basically about an American couple and some other friends who became communists here in the United States and became disillusioned in the United States and went to communist Russia, and then really seen the truth of communism over there, but they invested so much time already into it. What were they going to do? And I'm not going to spoil the ending of Reds, but if you have the stomach to sit that long, maybe you might have to split it up in a couple settings to watch the Reds. I highly recommend it just for that purpose. And I wouldn't say it's for the casual moviegoer, as it were. Well, I see folks on the YouTube timer over here. I'm going on an hour 10 minutes on the show here. Again, I want to apologize to those on Blog Talk Radio, and I just want to make that apology to them and just let them know that it was the storms through here. Sometimes they just cause havoc with my connections to the servers of Blog Talk Radio in New York City. Now, folks, this has been the Dan Clemens Show. I'm your host, Dan Clemens, your constitutional war member.